This is Grenfell Tower. This was the scene of the deaths of 72 residents in June 2017 in a terrible inferno. 2 years later, there were commemorations for those who died in the fire. These included a church service, a vigil near the block, and a silent march through the surrounding streets. But despite this public demonstration of respect for those who died, tens of thousands of people in Britain are still living in dangerous homes which could go up in fatal flames.
Grenfell Tower underwent major renovations in 2015 and 2016. Those renovations did not include a fire sprinkler system. Grenfell Tower also lacked other safety features. It had only one stairwell, no fire doors, and no centralised alarm service. Yet it was more recent changes that enabled the fire to spread. This resulted in a raging inferno which trapped many in their homes or on the roof, with fatal consequences. Over £10 million has been spent on treatment of the mental health of those affected. In the year after the fire, over 2,600 adults and 450 children were screened for symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. 17 families remain in temporary accommodation, including one in a hotel, in spite of initial promises by then Prime Minister Theresa May that all would be rehoused within 3 weeks. Grenfell United, the group of bereaved and other survivors, has concluded that, in most cases, those in power simply aren't interested in acting on our concerns.
Will anyone be held responsible for the deaths and injuries at Grenfell Tower? And is Grenfell a one-off, or is another fire just like it only a matter of time? Simple questions with important answers. And to find those answers, we began with this. What has the government done since Grenfell to fix this fire hazard problem? Here's what the public thought.
No, they haven't done a bit, to be honest. I don't know if they've done 5% of what they need to do, or maybe 1%, because 2 years down the line, what have we seen? Nothing much, really. Even the numbers are dropping. The number of people, Remembrance Day today, exactly 2 years. It's very sad what we have today. This is a drastic disaster that we ever witnessed.
This is why today we have a remembrance and resilience service, so that somehow, some way, God might intervene and help our government to do the right thing.
The government could do a lot more, because there's a lot more buildings with the cladding around it. And the thing is, right, if it can happen once, it can happen again. So basically, the government should do a lot more stuff to get rid of all the cladding.
Basically, hearing on the news often that some of the victims up to today they haven't given them appropriate accommodation, and some of the victims had to leave the accommodations because they didn't like how the accommodation was. And so they should really make them priority. It's not too hard. So I don't think they have, actually.
I think it's self-evident that the government has not done enough, and the wonder is that the government has done anything. It's very difficult to give a tangible answer to what have they actually done, other than sit on the problem.
The inquiry for me has been a nightmare. I have been informed from the inquiry that it would be based around the bereaved and the survivors. We have come across many challenges against the inquiry in terms of location, venue, facilities, and the fact that the inquiry is not around this area or close to the tower, in my opinion, disrespects the history and the culture of the people that lived within the tower. Until today, the inquiry have made many promises and are going back on their word, and it's just been challenge after challenge, and it's something we shouldn't have to go through.
Visibly, precious little. You know, I think the onus is on the government to be as graphic as possible. Not only are they, you know, mandated as representatives and the orchestrators of our community, not only are they mandated to fill in the blank spaces, and there are so many of them, they also are working very much backdated. You know, I personally don't know any more 1 year on from us gathering here last year.
Does the public believe that another tragedy, such as the Grenfell fire, is just a matter of time?
But the conditions that brought it into being have existed for a long time in this area, and they still exist, and they will still continue to cause more death and destruction in many ways if not dealt with.
I think sometimes, depending on the actual type of environment people live, their surroundings and circumstances mean they may have better resilience already in place. So it's just trying to actually bring a better level playing field maybe for society, that everyone is looked after and cared for, and preparation for this type of thing is in place for everyone, really.
I'm praying not. I really am praying not. We had just 2 days ago, we had in Barking, we had a whole system go up in flames because of wooden balconies. The building regs that seem to be very loose now, we need to tighten up.
No doubt, no doubt. I mean, I'm sure there are about, I don't have the figures, there are plenty of buildings with the same flammable materials. I don't think they've done what they need to be doing. The action hasn't been taken. I'm sure not all of them. It will. Eventually it will.
The fact that many buildings still have flammable cladding or dangerous materials around them actually makes me feel very sick. I'm worried, and it just seems like everything that we're campaigning for, nobody is listening. It makes me feel that another Grenfell could happen again, and it's opened up people's eyes to question: do they live in safe homes? Are their children going to safe schools? Are hospitals that we are going to safe? So it's making people question the building industry and the loopholes that we probably have in our building regulations. It's questioning the safety of the products that are the materials that are being used to build these infrastructure.
Well, one would think so, because whilst it's been said that the lessons have been learned, you know, I think anybody who's sat to be educated knows that there must be manifest impregnation of the subconscious, you know, where you can, if you regurgitate something that's good, lessons have been learned. But if you do otherwise, you know, saying this, what are you doing but dealing with pain and sickly bile? And that's how it feels, you know, that we all have experience of acidity. It's not pleasant, never has been, and there's always something else behind it. And I think that's what we have here. We have people who've shown oodles of humility.
Many comparatively poor people died in the Grenfell fire. Does the public think the conditions that led to these deaths would have been tolerated in a building primarily inhabited by the wealthy?
But basically, this is definitely for the poor, right? Because if it was like rich people, right, they would want to have the best quality, right? First of all, and they would pay for the best like equipment there is, because like money buys you the best of everything.
They won't live in this kind of building to start with. It will not happen to them. If there's an incident or fire incident to that extent, it will be to one house, for one family. You're not going to live in an apartment like 500, 600, 700 people in one apartment. It would never happen to them. It will not.
No, because they obviously put more money into those areas. And so an area like this, it's half and half. You've got the rich and the poor divided. And so a tower like Grenfell, as we all know, and as it's been told that the claddings was not appropriate, and so it wouldn't happen.
I think sometimes, depending on the actual type of environment people live, their surroundings and circumstances mean they may have better resilience already in place. So it's just trying to actually bring a better level playing field maybe for society, that everyone is looked after and cared for, and preparation for this type of thing is in place for everyone, really.
No. The conditions here is what brought it into being. This is what I'm saying. It will happen in places like this. It won't happen in places like Chelsea. Yeah, but it will happen down here in North Kensington.
I don't think this atrocity would have happened in, say, for example, Knightsbridge. The reason for being is that the Kensington and Chelsea Council are one of the richest boroughs in London, so the money is there. The fact that it is social housing makes me question, are they trying to save a few pennies here and there because it is social housing? And also, it leads me to question the materials that are being used on social housing. I mean, could you name me a building that has been built within, say, for example, Knightsbridge, that anybody is aware of, that has caught fire, for example? So it's leading me to question the materials that are being used on social housing.
Well, I'm not poor myself, but I was born into one of the poorest areas of Hackney, of London, which is Hackney. It's now regenerated. Would this have happened? No, of course it wouldn't have happened. There's so many things you can think of. Not to this effect, it wouldn't have happened. No. You know, communication, we know we go to some people don't even speak the same language. You know, and when you're asking people to get out of a building, they're going to leave everything behind. They don't know. Unless one was at the inquiry every day, you sit aghast. You cannot believe what happened. But in direct answer to your question, I think did class come into it? Of course it did.
Housing charity Shelter claims 500,000 social housing tenants have reported the same fault more than 10 times to their landlord in the past 3 years. While the flammable cladding is a cost saving, it has been discovered that Kensington and Chelsea Council, the local authority responsible for Grenfell Tower, had reserves exceeding £150 million. And across London, 96% of council tower blocks don't have fire sprinklers, even though towers over 30 metres tall legally require them, because the law does not apply retrospectively.
Who is really responsible for this tragedy? Kensington and Chelsea Council, whose offices are behind me, the government, someone else? And will there ever be any hope of justice and accountability in regard to this tragedy? The public said this.
I think undoubtedly the government is significantly responsible for what has happened here. Who oversaw the regulatory breaches? Who oversaw the regulatory dilution? Who was responsible for reducing the funds available to those inspecting buildings under construction and so on? And ultimately, who was responsible for the cuts to the fire service or the cuts to the police and all the other consequences which were exposed as a result of this disaster? So yes, the government has an awful lot to answer for and is scurrying around trying to pass the buck, one imagines.
The council is responsible because predominantly the council is responsible to making sure, but then the government is also responsible because we have heard on the news that in terms of the cladding and when when it was made known that the cladding was not appropriate, the government had the idea, they knew what was going on, but they didn't move quick enough, basically. And so both the government and the council are at fault.
We're all responsible. The nation needs to turn back to God. Our nation, this nation, needs to turn back to God, put their hope in God and not in economics. Money is not really going to save our nation. We need to repent and turn back to God.
You know, the firms that produce the cladding, the Arconics, you know, the people who saw it fit to go on the building. Like, this is what should be happening. Why is it taking so long to get a result? Because I guarantee if we did anything near that in our environment, it wouldn't take them 2 minutes to come and look for us and lock us up for, even if we hadn't done anything.
People should go to prison. But the thing is, right, I think they will only have like corporate manslaughter charges against them. Right? So basically the companies involved will have to pay a massive fine. I don't think no one will go to prison directly. I think it will be like a manslaughter charge.
I don't have much faith in the justice system in this country. There are many corporates and bodies that are responsible for this inferno. I can't name them for legality reasons. Also because there's a criminal investigation going on at the moment. But like I said, we know who you are. We know you are hiding. We know you guys are trying to cause pass the buck, and it is for your best intention for everybody to be involved in what happened. But we will uncover you and we will expose you for who you are originally, and putting profit and greed at the cost of people's lives.
For me, there is a hope of getting justice, because at the moment it's just us. In terms of who is responsible, the government are responsible. Ultimately, it's the government that are responsible. You know, work was subbed out to people. This is, you know, you have to do this, you have to do that. Somebody's coordinating centrally, but if you don't, well, where are you? It's 100% on the government's shoulders. Somebody's responsibility was to monitor these work being. Somebody's responsibility was to process. I don't know what's the word to you? It's somebody's responsibility to process proposals and people bidding for work. It won't be the first time, and I don't believe it will be the last time that somewhere in there's been some forms of malpractice.
How can those affected by this tragic and life-changing event recover from the trauma and loss that it has caused?
They won. We won. I take it from me. We won, because this happened in front of our eyes. This is our local playground 5 minutes away. All the kids that they play football, they seen it burning. Some of the friends, they burned in that building. We lost friends and families. We will never come over it. It's impossible. We're going to live for the rest of our life with a scar.
carry on with your life, you know. But you can never replace that. Can never be replaced, and that's something that is very difficult in this situation, because, like, you know, it's like, how long is a piece of string?
They will never forget, and I rather think that remembering is going to scar people for a long. I think it would be a very unusual person who could recover in the sense that we would wish. It seems to me that you simply live a different life after experiencing something like this, and you try to find a way of living with it.
No, this is a lifetime scar that people are going to have. And oftentimes some people may feel that they don't know how they could trust the councils. I wouldn't. If I was living in that, I would want to be in under a different council, a different management, because you wouldn't feel that they have your best interest.
They can if they put their trust in God. God can do it. God's a God of miracles, isn't he? So, you know, if we turn to God, I think that there can be a change. But if we're just looking to ourselves, it'll be very difficult.
I lost 6 family members due to the Grenfell Inferno. My mother, my sister, my 3 nieces and my brother-in-law. I don't think anybody will recover from this inferno, and they will be scarred for life. The damage has been done. All the bereaved, all the survivors and the community can do is come together to fight for justice, to make sure this doesn't happen again, to make sure everybody all over the world is made aware of what has happened here, so that they can question, is their home safe? Are their schools safe? And to basically make sure that this doesn't happen again. We will remain scarred for life, and the damage has been done. And we need to unite together to make sure that other people don't go through the same thing that we have gone through.
By coming together, you know, we were together beforehand, and this was never going to be allowed to decimate, you know, family life, morals, beliefs. So if anything, we can now hold Mary and Khadija up as beacons, because one of the stories not told is the fact that where we come from, a mother will never desert her child, never, ever. And of course that's what they set out to do, to stay together. If you'd been privy to the inquiry, you would have known they did their utmost to remain together for as long as possible. So stick together, stay together. I was here this time last year, I was here this time the year before, and I'll be here this time next year. And I hope for as long as there's a building here, it will give testimony at least once a year to those whose lives were taken away from them, but who did everything they could to stay a hold of their lives.
Investigations revealed that this fatal fire, which was also fueled by flammable cladding, started in a failing refrigerator on the 4th floor of the building. A police investigation into possible manslaughter, corporate manslaughter and health and safety offences will not conclude before 2021. But for all the legalities, the release of doves at the commemoration ceremony brought home the beauty and fragility of life.
Grenfell Tower suffered the deadliest structural fire in the United Kingdom in nearly 3 decades, and London's worst residential fire since World War II. Nobody had to live in a building designed to burn so fiercely, but hundreds did, and 72 lost their lives. These deaths were avoidable, and many believe that if this building had been for the wealthy instead of the poor, no one would have died at all.